welcome to YHC TV today, Hometown Heroes. And today we're on the patio of visiting with Cliff Manlove. And good to have you on the program today, Cliff.
Thank you, Jim. Pleasure to be on it.
Well, Cliff, how young are you this day?
Well, I'm 94.
94.
And on November the 12th, I'll be 95.
I'll tell you what, you look good and healthy.
Well, I feel pretty good.
Good deal. Not many 94-year-old folks are privileged to say that all this day.
Well, you know, I hear that quite often, Jim,
Yeah.
So I just hope I can continue to keep in good health, to stay in good health.
I had my grandfather lived to be almost 101 in good health.
Is that right?
He sure did.
Yeah.
Well, Cliff, tell us a little bit about your early childhood and where you lived and that sort of thing for us.
Well, I've given a lot of thought to that lately because I knew this was coming up.
Yes, sir.
And I remember, probably the first thing I remember, now I was born in Wood River, Illinois.
Okay.
So the area I'm talking about is near St. Louis, across the river, near Alton, Illinois. And I can remember airplanes, and it was Jennies. I know as well as I was sitting here that it was a Jenny that landed in a field near Wood River. And my dad was with me, and he was barnstorming, taking rides. My dad put me in his lap, and we climbed in that Jenny, and that's the first airplane ride that I can remember. And as you know, a lot of surplus Jennies from World War I were into that business, barnstorming around.
Yeah.
That's my first airplane flight. But probably the most, it seems like airplanes would land around the edge of town. I would have to run to go find out what was going on.
Now, about how old were you when you took that?
Well, I was probably about 12 years old. The best I can remember, 10 or 12 years of age.
Now, didn't you tell me that it was really noisy and the wind was coming through there? Really noisy? Or did you not?
In that Jenny?
Yes, sir.
Oh, everything about it was noisy. As a matter of fact, I think, if I remember, there was a radiator up somewhere on it, and it would water every once in a while would fly back.
Oh, heck.
But it seems to me, Jim, that from that time on, that I was continually exposed and to aircraft one way or another, and I was just naturally interested in them.
Sure.
And of course, then Lindbergh's flight in 1927 was a big event, and that's pretty well on my mind. And I've read everything I can about Lindbergh. So that seems to be the beginning of all of this.
Yeah.
And Lambert Field, just not too far away. When I got into high school, I had a motorcycle. As often as I could, I would go down to Lambert Field and hang around. Yeah.
Well, Cliff, we don't want to leave out your family here now, and your wife's not able to be with us here today.
Yes.
Your wife's name's June.
Right.
And tell us a little bit about Miss June.
Well, my folks moved here to Dexter in the late 30s. By that time, I was in college in late 30s.
Yeah.
So I'd graduated from high school in 1936. And my folks moved in here around in Dexter around 38 or 39 in that time period. That's how I met June, because she was living here in Dexter.
Sure.
And so out of our courtship and going together a couple of years, when I finally finished flying school in the Air Force, Air Corps in those days, 1942, we married. You couldn't be married when you were, to be accepted for the Air Corps. So at that time it was the Air Corps. Today it's the Air Force. We married the day I graduated from flying school.
Did you?
Yeah.
The day you graduated.
Now that was March the 16th, 1942. March the 16th, 1942.
Now, Cliff, did you have brothers and sisters when you was?
I had a brother that passed away at about the age of 7.
Oh, heck.
He had a lung problem. I won't go into details on that.
Yeah.
So and I can remember that, and he passed away in about 1933. So.
Now, you told me earlier you went to high school there in Wood River, is that correct?
Yes.
And you told me...
No, correction, Jim,
Oh.
in Alton, Illinois.
Okay.
Because my parents had moved to Alton about the time I started high school.
Well, you said there was one fellow particularly...
Oh, yeah.
That was a little bit tall, wasn't he?
Robert Wadlow.
Robert Wadlow.
As far as I know, he still has the record of being the tallest human being, tallest man in the world.
How tall was he?
8'11".
I hope you got that, Tyler.
And I lived not too far from him, just a few blocks from him.
Yeah.
Saw him quite often, and he was in my class.
Oh, my.
And of course now, and this was in Alton, Illinois.
Yes, sir.
And there's a statue in his memory that our graduating class had made in memory of Robert Wadlow, and it's on the campus of Southern Illinois University.
Oh,
there
SIU.
SIU in Alton.
Yeah.
Known as Upper Alton.
Upper Alton.
And it's on the campus of what used to be Shirtliff College.
Let's see. Now, he didn't live to be a ripe old age either, did he?
No, he died in his early 20s
Yes, sir.
of a foot infection.
Oh.
And he, by the way, did visit Dexter because my wife remembers seeing him. And so he had many offers, I think, to go into shows and things like that. But he did travel for Brown Shoe Company.
He did. because
he did allow them to advertise and use his name.
Now you was mentioning Lindbergh's flight. I think you told me you was around 10 years old, but you got to see him fly, didn't you?
I was 10 years old. That's right, Jim. I was born in 1917, and he went in May of 1927. Yeah.
But you got to see him fly there at Lambert Field, or?
Oh yes, yes, I did. He hung around there.
Yes, sir.
A lot of early life was up in St. Louis, and on one occasion, and this was after he had made his solo flight, I did see him and his airplane fly in St. Louis.
And he flew all over the United States. I saw a map one time, or really all over the world, but I mean he flew all over the United States making appearances.
Yes. I've read everything as far as I know that's been written about him, his books, and writers have written about his life, and so he's really a hero of mine.
Sure, that's right. Well, I know another fellow I think that sparked your interest, and you heard him speak at school, Admiral Byrd.
Richard Byrd, yes.
Tell us about him.
Yes. Well, at an assembly in our high school in Alton, Illinois, Admiral Byrd was a speaker. He had he spoke about his experience in the Antarctica. You know, if you read anything about Admiral Byrd, he spent, I think almost 6 months in the Antarctic. Probably the first explorer, really, of the Antarctic. And he used, by the way, a tri-motor aircraft, a Ford, I think it was a Ford or a Stinson tri-motor. Well, Byrd came in to be the speaker. I saw him go out an exit, and I got up, slipped out of the auditorium, and all he was doing was walking around out there.
Was he?
And I just pulled up beside him and talked to him about about how much I enjoyed his talk. And then I knew the name of his pilot. Cherry was his last name. And I told him that I was going to fly when I got to be older.
Yeah.
And of course, he didn't have much to say to me. But he was a pretty big fellow. He was a big man.
Now did you have hanging around Lambert Field or Southern Illinois there? Did you have any other really unique experiences there at Lambert Field? Or
well, at Lambert, I would do anything I could to work around on the ramp.
Yeah.
And this is when I went from Alton to Lambert.
Yeah.
They'd let me help with washing the airplane or something, and I'd end up getting maybe an airplane ride. That's what that amounted to.
Okay, Cliff, up in the Purdue area, you met a young lady up there. Tell us about Miss Amelia Earhart.
Well, I can say yes that I did meet her. The Purdue University was establishing or starting a school in aeronautical engineering. That was not my choice of curriculum or at Purdue or degree, but Amelia Earhart was brought in there, I know, for publicity purposes because of an alumni of Purdue, Bendix Carburetor, and I guess the university were supporters of her flight in which she was lost.
Yes, sir.
And her airplane, Purdue had an airport, and she brought her twin-engine Lockheed, the Electra that she went down in, to the airport and kept it there for about 4 or 5 months prior to her flight.
And now, I know you went to school at Purdue, correct?
Yes.
And now, did you graduate from Purdue?
No, I didn't graduate from Purdue because the World War II interfered with that program. And then I wasn't doing too well. At Purdue was a real difficult college.
But that's about the time you entered the service.
Yes.
Well, tell us kind of about entering upon the service.
Well, the Air Corps, as it was known at that time, was a goal that I wanted to reach, you know?
Yes.
I knew, read as much about it as possible. You had to have at least 2 years of college. So I worked toward the 2 years of college at Purdue in order to get into the Air Force, or the Air Corps at that time. So I entered the Air Corps in August of 1941 with my 2 years of college. And of course the war was on the horizon, but Pearl Harbor hadn't happened yet. But Purdue was a natural for me in my interest.
Sure.
But I started out in engineering, but I began to realize pretty quick at Purdue that engineering was just not my cup of tea. But I got into a general education program. Sure. And so after 2 years, actually I spent 3 years at Purdue, but I had, with 2 years credit, I got into the Air Corps in August of 1941.
And you done your basics then?
Well, I was accepted for the Air Force or the Air Corps, and in August of 1941, and was sent to Phoenix, Arizona for primary flying at Thunderbird Field.
And what was the trainer? What was it?
PT-17, the Boeing PT, famous biplane. It was the airplane for the Air Force at that time, the Air Corps.
Now, where were you located when Pearl Harbor happened then?
I was in Bakersfield, California.
I thought that's right. Yeah.
Enrolled in, having been sent to Bakersfield for the Air Force program basic training.
Yes, sir.
And it was a more advanced airplane built by Vultee Aircraft. And we're talking about Sunday morning now. Yeah. So we had the weekend off and was in the city of Bakersfield, sitting in a hotel restaurant, and they announced Pearl Harbor over the radio. So immediately, a voice came on saying that all cadets would report immediately to the airport.
Yes, sir.
To the airfield, rather. So that was the start of it. Quite an experience.
There was something about claiming your rifle.
Did I mention that?
Yeah, earlier.
Well, yes. When I got out at the airport, they'd opened up boxes, and all the cadets were issued a rifle.
Yes, sir.
And they had been packed in Cosmoline. And so you look at that greasy rifle, and what do you do with it? Well, the sergeant says you take it and clean it. With what? Well, I remember it was Fels Naphtha soap. So here we are as cadets in a shower, all of us in there with soap and a brush trying to clean those rifles.
Well, that's neat.
But it wasn't, we only had those rifles for about a week, then they took them back realizing the folly of it all. But
Yes, sir.
you can imagine the action taken at that time. They thought the Japanese were going to land right on the West Coast.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So it was every man defend himself,
That's right,
you know,
that's
with a
right.
rifle. It was just a quick, where they came from, I have no idea, but those rifles showed up there real quick.
Well, by that time you'd had several hours of flying, and you were you an instructor as of then? You wasn't. Was
Well, at Purdue, I got into I was a member of a flying club.
Okay.
And so prior to going into the Air Corps, I'll refer to it as the Air Corps at that time, I had a private's license.
Yeah. Okay.
So I had an edge on a lot of my
Sure.
partner, a lot of my other students, because I knew how to fly and had a license. So really it was easy for me to...
Yeah. And then after you graduated at that particular place?
No, not there, Jim. I was transferred from Bakersfield up to Sacramento, California. At Mather Field.
Okay. Did June fly out there, or was it?
Well, June, of course, was back here in Dexter, and my parents brought her out there for Christmas.
I see.
And I hadn't graduated from flying school, but we made plans then to get married on graduation of March 16th, 1942. And that was my graduation day from flying school in Sacramento, and that's where we married.
That's what I thought.
March the 16th, 1942.
Well, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, you went to multi-engine flying?
Well,
did you?
yes, you could refer to it as multi-engine. It was a twin-engine. I was assigned, my orders were to be an instructor.
Okay.
In other words, when I graduated, some of the graduates went into combat units.
Yeah.
The war was on. I, however, was assigned to a flying school at Victorville, California. That's up on the Mojave Desert, and as an instructor. And it was an advanced flying school, twin engine.
Yes, sir.
Twin engine aircraft, and they also had single engine, the AT-6, but I was an instructor.
Now, shortly after that, you told me that you learned to fly the four-engine planes, and that TWA pilots were your instructors. And
that's true. You remember that. After about a year and a half as an instructor, I was anxious to, along with some other instructors, how can we get out of the training command? Well, it was easy because they began having a need for pilots in combat, you know, get ready for the war, which was ongoing. So I was transferred then from into a four-engine flying school at Albuquerque, known then as still is today as Kirtland Field. And the surprise was that TWA pilots were running the four-engine flying school. So my instructor was a TWA pilot. And we called him Raines. His last name was Raines, but he was not a very well trained instructor, but a very good pilot. We called him No Brains Raines.
No brains.
You know how you are in those
sure,
days. You
sure,
fix
sure,
that nickname.
Well, I think we're coming up on here, Cliff. We need to take a short break, and then we'll be back.
All right.
Professional service with care and compassion. We at Rainey Mathis Funeral Homes strive to provide you a respectable environment and services during the time of your loss. We offer numerous services including pre-planning arrangements, memorial family tributes, and webcasting for those unable to attend a service. We will listen to you and your wishes to help plan a celebration consistent with your expectations. Rainey Mathis Funeral Homes in Dexter and Bernie.
Hi, I'm State Representative Terry Swinger. Parent involvement in a child education is a major factor in determining success. When parents participate, children have improved grades and attendance, and they experience a decrease in violence and substance abuse. Involvement can be as easy as chaperoning a field trip or volunteering in the classroom. So stay involved with your children. It is the single most important thing you can do to help them grow and learn.
All right, we're back with Cliff Manlove on YHC today. And Cliff, we're kind of in the middle of this, and you just finished your 4-engine training with the TWA pilots. And now I have in my notes here something about a Missouri Mule.
That was the name of the aircraft that I took to combat.
Okay.
Just prior to that, Jim, I had to go through training in Mountain Home, Idaho, in the support training in the B-24, and I was assigned at that time with the 490th Bomb Group. They were assembling and organizing what was then known as the 490th Bomb Group, and we were getting preparing then for combat assignment. Didn't know where,
right. But
as it turned out to be to England, the 490th Bomb Group. We flew our aircraft to England from the States. And,
that tell us about that route. You didn't just fly straight. It was quite a deal too to get there.
No, there was two ways you could. With that, aircraft were flown to Europe, combat aircraft. Either the northern route, which would go up across Greenland and into Scotland. Then there was a southern route, which would leap off from Natal, Brazil, to Dakar, Africa, and on up into England. Not knowing, at the time we were assigned, that the 490th Bomb Group was alerted to go overseas, we didn't know which route.
Sure.
It turned out to be the southern route.
Yeah.
So I flew across from South America to Africa and up to England.
And there were, if I remember right, there were 64 of these new planes. They were new planes.
The bomb group had 64 aircraft.
And you went in as a group?
We went as a group. It traveled as a group, flew as a group rather, all the way from the Mountain Home, Idaho to England. Those were brand new aircraft, B-24s, built by Consolidated Aircraft.
And then
4-engine aircraft.
Now, shortly after that, you were made captain.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I made captain just before we went overseas. In December of 1943, I was promoted to captain. I think mainly, Jim, I made captain. In wartime, promotions come pretty fast.
I see, yeah.
And so within 18 months of my graduation, good gosh, they made me a captain. Yeah. I think it was mainly because of my flying experience as an instructor.
Probably.
And the fact that I was in a combat unit.
Yes, sir.
And they had so many captains they had to have, so many lieutenants and so many colonels and so forth. I lucked out and made captain right away.
Now, did this airplane have radar capability, the first one?
No, those didn't. The radar capability was not available until after we got to England, and they were then installed in the aircraft.
I see. I know you mentioned the P-51 Mustangs and something about Doolittle Group. Tell us about the Doolittle. What you were familiar with.
Yeah, make a long story short, after I finished my bomber tour of 30 missions.
30 missions, that's
yes.
Right, 30 missions.
I felt I wanted to stay around and see what was going to happen over there, you know?
Sure.
And I accidentally ran into a friend who had also flown a bomber tour, and I ran into him in London. And I asked him what he was doing, you know, was he going home or what? And he said, no. He said, I'm flying P-51s. I said, you mean the Mustang, the fighter? And he said, yes. I said, how did you do that? I said, being a bomber pilot, I knew he had flown a bomber tour.
Yeah.
He said, well, he said, it's a long story. He said, we're doing weather reconnaissance. He said the 55th Fighter Group had to furnish a squadron of P-51s to do nothing but fly weather ahead of, be able to broadcast the weather over the continent to the bombers.
Yeah.
And the 55th Fighter Group had to furnish a squadron of P-51s to former bomber pilots. In other words, one of the requirements was to get into this fighter squadron of weather reconnaissance aircraft. You had to must done a tour in the bombers.
Did you?
And I qualified for that.
You was itching to get in that P-51.
Well, yeah, I immediately went to see my commanding officer, and I was through with my bomber tour. I was just hanging around, wanting to know what to do next. And he said, my commanding officer, Colonel Bostrom, he said, is that what you want to do? And I said, yes. And he said, well, all right. They published, they sent me down there to that 55th Fighter Group, and I became a member then. They accepted me, and the military orders were cut, and it was that easy. So I flew 35 missions in a P-51,
35 missions,
which was regular fighter aircraft. And
well, I know you had gotten some heated moments, even if you was flying recon.
Well, I had one interesting moment, which you want me to describe briefly.
You don't have to if you don't want to.
Well, it was an ME-262, the German jet.
German jet.
Made its appearance, you know.
Yeah.
The Germans were ahead of us in the jet aircraft. Came up behind us, my formation of P-51s came up behind. I spotted him when he was had come in from behind, and started after him, but I couldn't even get close to him. He kept pulling away. It was over Munich.
Yes, sir.
That was the only contact really experience that I really had. Other than that, they were all very routine.
Well, of all the planes you flew, that had to be the ice cream, wasn't it?
That was the ultimate.
The
bomber was a strict, disciplined operation, formation, and it had to be.
Yeah.
You had large formations of bomber aircraft.
Yeah.
Fighters, it was every man for himself. And I had the opportunity to, if I wanted to fly down on ground level, well, we'd just peel off and head for the ground after we reported the weather.
Did you?
So I probably got a real good tour of Europe, which was so devastated, unbelievably devastated.
Now, did you broke a speed record? Was it in the P-51?
No, this was after the war in the A-26. I held a transcontinental speed record.
My Lord.
And, well, you said, my Lord.
Yeah.
Well, it needs some explanation.
Yeah.
I was stationed in Panama, and it seems as though there had always been an interest in how long it took to go from the Atlantic to the Pacific. It takes 8 hours by boat. It takes about 45 minutes by train. And in 1917, I understand historically that Hap Arnold flew a Jenny or a World War I aircraft, I think in about 17 minutes or something like that. Then I found out that during World War II, a P-38 had flown it in something like 6 minutes. Well, it was a challenge. I had that information.
Yes, sir.
I was flying the A-26 at the time in Panama, and it was a real challenge for me to try to break that record, which I did. So with the A-26 and the newspaper, the Panama newspaper reporter and all of that, I won't go into details of all of that, broke the speed record.
Yeah.
So I held what was a transcontinental speed record from the Pacific to the Atlantic.
Now that was
by flying across Panama.
That wasn't a jet. It was a
it was a
propeller.
It was really a high-speed twin-engine medium bomber.
Now, of all the planes you flew, you never did get to strap a jet on your back, did you?
Oh yes.
Did you?
Oh yeah. I was project officer on the B-66.
Were you?
And then, but I first checked out in what was known at that time was a T-33, a small
Was it?
jet trainer.
Well, that had to be a thrill, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, that was a whole new ball
That's a
game.
whole new ball game, wasn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. Well, let's jump up here now. You've done those 30 missions and then the 35 missions in the P-51.
That's right.
And war ended.
The war ended.
Now,
Yeah.
what happened after the war ended with your career in the military?
Well,
have you had another promotion after that? Were you up to?
well, after the war, I spent a good many years at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and for assignments there. And I was assigned to the Air Force Institute of Technology with a regular staff assignment, not a teacher or instructor or anything. And then, of course, Panama was an after the war experience.
Yes, sir.
And so then I was stationed at San Bernardino, California for a while.
Were you?
There's a lot of details involved in that, Jim.
Yeah.
But promotions came along on their regular schedule and time, and then the assignment that on which I it was in ROTC at the University of Missouri. So just prior to retirement in 1964, I was assigned to the University of Missouri as an ROTC professor of air science. And promoted. It just so happens that my promotion to lieutenant colonel came concurrently with my assignment in ROTC at the University of Missouri. I could go into a lot of details on assignments, but that's not, I don't think so.
And shortly, that was in 64. Well,
60 through 64.
Yeah, along about 1967 then, you got sent to Vietnam, is that right?
Yes. After I left the University of Missouri, I was assigned to the office of the Inspector General's office back in California, at San Bernardino, California. And when I finished a 3-year tour there with the Inspector General's office, the war in Vietnam was in need of pilots.
Yes, sir.
And I was anxious to get back into the aircraft again.
Were you?
So on my completion of my tour in San Bernardino then in, gosh, can't think of what year that was. I was on the completion of my tour at San Bernardino. I was sent for C-130, 4-engine turboprop training, and sent to the Philippines. So I was stationed in the Philippines until I retired in, when did I retire?
69.
69, yes. From 60, I spent about 1 year in the Philippines, in 1968. Flew back and forth into Vietnam in the C-130, which was a 4-engine turboprop aircraft.
And you have a unique thing about the Vietnam experience. Your son was stationed over there at the same time you were. That's very unusual.
Yeah, well, my son Dexter was a Navy pilot.
Yes, sir.
And he was, I think he was on about his 4th tour in that area.
My goodness.
On the Bonhomme Richard, on aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
But it so happens that he and I were over there about the same time. Not about, at the same time.
Yes.
And while I was stationed at Clark Field in the Philippines, not in Vietnam, I was in Clark Field in the Philippines, his carrier would occasionally pull into the Philippines there. And
get to visit.
So he was in the theater flying fighters while I was in there flying transports out of Clark Field.
Well, of all the airplanes you've been in, and you did have 2 to go down on you, did you? Two?
Well, I had to bail out of one time.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I was stationed then in Dayton, Ohio.
That's right, yeah.
At the Air Force Institute of Technology.
Yeah.
I had gone on, they had sent me to take an airplane to Middletown, Ohio, and or Pennsylvania, and to pick up an airplane that was in depot maintenance. It was what was known as a C-45, a twin-engine Beechcraft. So I took one out and left it at the depot there in Middleton, Pennsylvania, actually is where it was. And was on my way back when the prop came off. Actually, unbelievably, prop came off the left engine. I had, to make a long story short, I had spent the night at Pittsburgh and had picked up a passenger. He was a sergeant. And so the co-pilot and I had briefed him on the use of the parachute. We had to carry parachutes in those days. Yeah. And would you believe, about halfway back to Dayton, Ohio, near the town of Newark, Ohio, just flying along at 6,000 feet, and the left engine prop, there was some indication that there was a problem in the left engine. Was there? And I thought it was a ignition magneto problem. Yeah. It turned out to be the prop was beginning to wobble, yeah, and it wobbled off. And you can imagine the surprise of...
she flew steady for a few minutes.
And I had a passenger aboard.
Yeah, my Lord.
And would you believe, he was on his way overseas. He was a sergeant in the Army, and he was hitchhiking. I'd picked him up in Pittsburgh. And he successfully bailed out. Co-pilot bailed out, I bailed out. And there's a lot of details that go into that, Jim, that I think the fact remains, I couldn't believe it happened. And what's surprising about this, I think I told you, that's the second propeller that I lost.
Yeah, tell us about that first one.
Well, the first one, while I was at Purdue, I was a member of the flying club.
That's right.
And we had a small single-engine airplane, and this other fellow and I, both members of the flying club, were headed for St. Louis. And we passed over the town of Alton, Illinois, preparing to go into Lambert Field at St. Louis. Got over the river at low altitude, the prop in it came off, a small airplane. And we landed on a sandbar in the Missouri River. So not many pilots that I can think of, in fact I've never found one, that can say they lost two propellers off of it. I'm sure in combat there have been aircraft that both propellers have been shot off one way or another.
Do you have any idea what total flying hours you probably...
Yeah, I've got around 8,300 hours.
8,300 hours, oh my
I'm pretty close.
Yes, sir, it is. Yes, sir, it is. Well, I guess that's... is there anything else you'd like to add as far as your military career?
Well, I did the very thing, as I look back over my career in the military, I did exactly what I wanted to do.
Good deal.
It fulfilled all my needs to fly.
Yes, sir.
Whatever those needs are.
Yes, sir.
And a fully enjoyable experience, and as I can look back over it, I did what I wanted to do, and that's important.
Now, I didn't ask you this. Were you involved in Korea at all?
No.
I didn't think so.
No, I was stateside entirely on the Korea. Just involved in Vietnam, and which was quite a surprise for me, to have that. I did mostly hauling staff work and hauling, flying the C-130, transporting people and material across from the Philippines to Vietnam. I didn't do much flying in Vietnam itself.
Yeah. Well, we're certainly thrilled to death to have you here in Stoddard County. How did you end up in Dexter, Missouri?
Well, my parents lived here in the very house we're at now.
Okay.
And so on retirement in 1969.
And you retired as a full lieutenant?
Lieutenant colonel.
Lieutenant colonel.
Yeah.
Well.
And came back to Dexter. That was the place of choice.
Yes, sir.
My mother and dad moved over on our property, there's another building that my dad was his place of business. He turned into a home, and I moved into where they lived, and they moved next door.
Well, is your oldest son is named Dexter?
Named Dexter, right? Yes.
Well, now how did we do that?
Well, I was stationed at that time. I was stationed in Douglas, Arizona, as an instructor.
Yes, sir.
And but that doesn't have anything to do with the fact that we decided to name him Dexter. But that's where he was born, in Douglas, Arizona. So that's our hometown, and June and I would say, well, maybe when he goes back, if he ever goes back there to live, he'll become mayor or something. But anyhow, that's Dexter, and he has retired. He was an airline pilot and also a corporate pilot, and he's back here living, helping with. He retired and decided to come back here to live, and been here ever since.
And Cliff, you're fortunate enough too. You only live what, 1.5 miles from the Dexter Airport.
From the Dexter Airport.
And I know you've had a lot of activity of flying for pleasure, and you're a board member there to keep the airport. And Dexter is very fortunate to have the airport that it does.
Well, they are.
They really are.
That was an auxiliary field to the air base out of Malden.
Yes, sir.
And in after the war, the city paid $10,000 to the federal government on a quit claim deed, and bought the airport. The city owned the airport.
Yes, sir.
So then in 1971, Chet Medler, who was with the Chamber of Commerce, asked me if I'd be on the airport board. So I've been on the board ever since 1971. And enjoyed every minute of it, and still am on the board.
I used to hang around down there quite a bit, and Harry Bennett was one.
Harry Bennett
helped me solo, and I took my shirt and hung it up down there.
Oh, you did? You did the flying
yes,
too?
Sir, yes,
sir. Yeah.
Well, Cliff, listen, bud, it's sure been a pleasure to visit with you today, and we wish you and your wife the best. And Dexter is very grateful to have you, and you're a pleasure and a thrill for you to live in Stoddard County.
It's been a pleasure. My retirement here hasn't been anything but the best.
Good deal.
Really good.
Well, thank you for visiting with us on YHC TV today. Hope you enjoyed our visit with Cliff Manlove. And if you enjoyed our programs, please don't hesitate to call the YHC TV office, or you can or contact me, and we need you as a sponsor to help promote this program. And we've had a lot of good comments about it, and we hope to keep you on board. And thanks for viewing us today.
All right, Jim, it's a pleasure, and I appreciate this opportunity to be able to talk about my past.
You bet.
Not everybody's that interested in hearing it.
Oh, yeah.